Hey, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 20th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, it's great to be back on the pod for more than just a pop-in.
It wasn't the same. I like the pop-in,
Yeah,
but it's better to have you live.
There's no
and in
interaction.
person here.
There's no interaction in the pop-in. Like, I asked, like, at 11:30 p.m., the editor, I was like, what did Jill say on the podcast? Let me see if I have thoughts to pop in. And there's no actual interaction. But I want to thank you for running point these last few episodes as I've been traveling between Indiana and Texas and Arkansas and Tennessee and Kentucky. We're hoping to get home sometime today to New York.
Well, the real pity came in yesterday's On This Day in History when there was a Henry VIII reference and you missed it. And I was like, I don't even know where to go with this without Moshe.
Yeah, no, this is a real missed opportunity. The great thing about Henry VIII is he had 6 wives. And so there's just a lot of On This Days related to him. So rest assured, Jill, I missed yesterday, but the next time there's a key Henry VIII date, I'll be back with fun Henry VIII facts for all of you.
So I was actually hoping that you were going to do a pop-in at Henry VIII, but I figured you've got a lot on your plate there.
I'd reach exhaustion level. I flew in because I was heading into the tornado zone, which we'll talk about a bit on the podcast today. And I was like, all right, what do we got in the podcast? Okay, I'll definitely got to hit the tornado stuff because I'm here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to pass out. So it was a missed opportunity. Again, thank you for allowing me that opportunity, Jill. I didn't take it, but I shall take the next one. And, of course, thank you again for taking lead here. So if you need a few days off in the coming weeks, I'm here for you, Jill.
Well, now that you mention it, Moshe.
Moshe, I'm gone for the rest of the week. It is a
long weekend.
Jill's starting Memorial Day early, everybody. You also have to come get your Dubai chocolate. It's in the office waiting for you.
I hope it's more than Dubai chocolate. I feel like there's more
Jill,
there, right?
It's an entire suitcase full of candy and snacks. Like, you have a lot. There's a lot for you to go through. I don't know if you saw, for those of you who follow my wife on Instagram, I unpacked everything and she goes, who are you? What am I supposed to do with all of this? She took a photo and posted it on Instagram. She goes, does anyone want to help us with the snacks Moshe brought home from Indiana? And
she's like a health food person.
Oh yeah, she's like people are questioning me right now, Moshe. Like, how have I allowed you to go
it's
so far?
It's not on brand.
It's very off brand for her. Yes.
All right, let's get to some headlines though. From tornadoes to extreme heat to flooding and snow, it is shaping up to be a really wild weather week across the country. Moshe, of course, is on the ground in hard-hit Kentucky.
Yeah, I'll give you a sense of what I saw there, what I learned there, the tragedy, but also some of the more heartwarming moments.
President Trump says Russia and Ukraine will start ceasefire negotiations after he held a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where the negotiations might take place.
You're it, Pope Leo XIV.
He's like, I've been on the job 2 days.
Right. The Pope is like, what have you misinterpreted? We'll get into it.
Former President Biden posting on social media as questions swirl about his cancer diagnosis and the timing of his announcement. The big question, did he have cancer when he was in the White House?
Even some doctors who are longtime Democrats, Jill, say yes, he probably did.
The Supreme Court revokes deportation protections for Venezuelans. We've got to look at where they could be going next. What President Trump is calling his one big, beautiful bill advances, but will House Speaker Johnson be able to hold his party together to get the bill passed?
And what will the final bill actually look like? It remains in flux.
Is the minivan cool again? Your parents' old car appears to be making a bit of a comeback. Don't
Jill,
call it a comeback, Moshe.
It's been here for years.
It's
been here for years. We used to have, I think it was a Plymouth Voyager back in the day, Jill.
We had a station wagon, but I am such a minivan fan.
Well, we'll tell you how many are being sold this year, Jill.
Some media news. The president of CBS News, the latest to leave over the network's standoff with President Trump.
Jill, by my count, they're about to hit their 5th president in 5 years. As your resident CBS News historian here, I'll give you my take on all of it.
And how often do you feel like you are interrupted during your workday? There's some new research out with the actual numbers, Moshe.
There's the email, there's a Slack, there's phone, there's social media. Jill, I can't imagine anyone goes more than a few minutes these days without being interrupted several times an hour.
You're close. Plus Moshe is on this day in history.
Summer, summer, summertime.
He's back, people.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank God.
Someone had to do a terrible impression of DJ's Jazzy Jeff.
I was going to say Will Smith, but that's right. It is DJ Jazzy.
It's a duo, Jill. They were once, you once couldn't find one without the other. We'll explore it on this day in history.
All right, forecasters are warning of another round of severe storms headed for the central United States this week. Days after extreme weather killed at least 28 people across several states. The National Weather Service said that a, quote, multitude of hazardous weather would impact the United States over the next several days, from thunderstorms and potentially baseball-sized hail on the plains to heavy mountain snow in the west and dangerous heat in the south. Areas at risk of thunderstorms include communities in Kentucky and Missouri that were hit by Friday's tornadoes. Moshe, you are in hard-hit Laurel County, Kentucky, where residents are still combing through the destruction.
Yeah, we traveled to the epicenter of the tornado damage yesterday, Jill. Devastation in some neighborhoods. Talked to people who've lived there for 40 years, didn't think they would be hit. In some cases, didn't even believe the forecast. And in a number of our conversations, it was at the insistence of family members or neighbors that led them to make a split-second decision that would ultimately save their lives. I talked to one woman yesterday whose daughter called her multiple times saying, "Mom, come to my place. I have a basement and you don't." And finally, upon the last call, she's like, "Fine, I'll drive to your place, but like nothing's going to happen here." And it saved her life. She came back and we met her at the home that was completely destroyed and leveled by the tornado, crediting her daughter with saving her life. Another man who happened to have a basement in his house, but said, we don't need to go to the basement. It'll be fine. His wife was saying, no, let's go to the basement. Let's go to the basement. Thankfully, he listened to his wife because, Jill, nothing was left of the house. When they walked out of the basement, literally the stairs led to the outdoors. The entire house was ripped off. All that was left was a cement foundation and like the back of the kitchen, basically. And that was it. And so it just story after story yesterday as we were making our way through London, Kentucky, a town of about 8,000 people. They actually hold the World Chicken Festival. That county, actually, Laurel County, is the birthplace for Colonel Sanders of KFC. So, you know, a long history here. And these people, a very close-knit community. And you saw it yesterday. I got a chance to witness it. We posted a number of clips over on Instagram. We got more coming up today of just neighbors looking after neighbors here. And as we were doing interviews yesterday, learning people's stories, we'd be interrupted multiple times by community members, state residents, people from out of state saying, "Hey, do you need some water? Do you need some food? Can I help you? Do you need a chainsaw? Can I help you clean things up?" And so at the same time, you're hearing about this tragedy, 19 people killed, 10 seriously injured in Kentucky. And at the same time, these stories of neighbor helping neighbor and all these amazing Good Samaritans helping each other out. I ran to a group of Mennonites that were helping people tarp up their ceilings and clean up their yards quickly. There's actually a story recently of a tornado, Jill, not this one, but a recent memory where National Weather Service tried to determine how powerful the tornado was afterwards, and they look at the damage. But the Mennonite group that came in cleaned it up so quickly that they couldn't actually make the determination on how powerful the tornado was because of how quick they are to help their neighbors there. So that was remarkable to witness. We happened to be there with Matthew 25 Ministries. They're a group out of Cincinnati that handles a lot of disaster relief. They work with Procter & Gamble, a program called Tide Loads of Hope, passing out care kits, shampoo, toothpaste, deodorant, toilet paper, paper towels, doing laundry for folks. And so you can catch more of that over on the Instagram feed as well. But, you know, Jill, each natural disaster is very unique. You know, I've been at the scene of powerful earthquakes where just widespread damage, hurricanes, and flooding, widespread damage. And then you have tornadoes, which seems so arbitrary. Literally, we spent some time yesterday on a street, Airview Drive in London, Kentucky. You can pull it up on Google Maps, and you can see the before. And on one side of the street, Joe, a couple of the homes, literally the flower pots on people's porches and furniture, still there, almost unmoved. Other side of the street, houses completely destroyed. Nothing left of them. And really, you know, the difference was a matter of 50 or 100 feet. that is one of the remarkable things and unique things about tornadoes is also what makes tornadoes so scary, because you have little notice sometimes. If you're lucky, you might get the warning a half an hour, 45 minutes in advance, but sometimes it's just a matter of minutes.
I'm glad you mentioned that about just how random the tornadoes can feel in terms of the damage. I covered a tornado when I was in Lansing, Michigan, and the tornadoes were hitting at night, and it was frightening because you couldn't see them and the sirens were going off. And we were at one point in a news van and we were hearing sirens go off and we're like, what do we even do? And my boss was like, get into a basement somewhere. What do you mean?
Get out of the car. It will fling you somewhere. Jill, that was one of the issues with what happened in Kentucky over the weekend. The tornado that hit this area in London, Kentucky, it happened about midnight on Friday night. And so people were describing staying up, listening to coverage. In many cases, Jill, there's a lot of storm chasers and people monitoring weather patterns and satellite coverage on YouTube that some people are listening to. And then others, very unluckily, went to bed that night and weren't up at midnight when the tornado came through. Ultimately, the people I was speaking to yesterday were those who were awake at that time and monitoring the headlines, or had a younger family member who was monitoring YouTube or social media saying, Mom, Dad, Uncle, Aunt, like, we need you to, take this seriously. This one's actually going to come through. And that's what you always hear time and time again with these storms is like, well, last time it went north of us and this time it went south of us. And so I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it would actually run through our neighborhood because it never has before. But there's always that chance, folks. And so those of us in the Midwest, I grew up in the Chicago area, grew up with tornado drills in school, going to the hallway, putting your head down. And so if you're in the Midwest and you have a basement, that's where you go. Otherwise, you go to an interior room. You might go into a bathtub, put a mattress on top of yourself, wear a helmet. But it's always that interior room that gives you the best chance. Get away from the windows and get as low as possible.
As for this week, thunderstorms with potentially damaging winds are forecast for a region stretching from northeast Colorado to central Texas. Tornadoes will again be a threat from central Kansas to Oklahoma. And then you've got triple-digit temperatures that are forecast for parts of South Texas with the potential to break daily records. The hot, dry air also sets the stage for critical wildfire conditions through early this week in southern New Mexico and West Texas. And then, if you could believe it, up to a foot of snow is expected in parts of Idaho and western Montana. So we've got a little poo-poo platter of everything here in the United States.
No more bad poo-poo than good poo-poo, Jill, with all this extreme weather. Back to tornadoes for a second. For those curious, we put up this map once in a while over on the Instagram account, just how many tornadoes happen in the U.S. And that's the thing, is the majority of the world's tornadoes actually happen in the U.S., about 1,200 annually, though we have been seeing the numbers go up in recent years. Some attribute that to climate change. It has to do a bit with our unique topography here in the U.S. You have the Rocky Mountains and then the plains. So you go from that high elevation down to this flat, very flat surface. Then at the same time, you have the heat and the humidity from the Gulf that comes up. And so basically that jet stream, the wind off the mountains onto the plains, hitting that heat from the Gulf of Mexico, or I should say now Gulf of America. And that leads to this literal perfect storm here that leads to all these tornadoes. Yeah, there are sometimes tornadoes in Europe and other parts of the world, but not the number that we see here in the U.S. And Tornado Alley, as they refer to it, is been moving over the course of the past few years as things get drier in the plain states, more moist in the south. So what was Tornado Alley of Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, now moving towards the area that I'm coming to you from, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi. And May typically is peak month for tornadoes, but tornado season now is lasting several months.
All right, overseas, on Monday, President Trump claimed that Russia and Ukraine will, quote, immediately start ceasefire negotiations after he held a nearly 2-hour-long phone call yesterday with the Russian leader. In a Truth Social post after the call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump called the, quote, tone and spirit of the conversation excellent. He said Russia wants to engage in large-scale trade with the United States when the war is over. The Russians were a bit more circumspect, shall we say. After speaking to Trump, Putin would only say that efforts to end the war were generally on the right track and that Moscow is ready to work with Ukraine on a potential peace deal. As for what's next, Trump went on to suggest that the Vatican is now interested in helping to take the lead in ceasefire negotiations.
You're at Pope Leo the 14th.
That's right. Pope Leo is the new Steve Witkoff.
Pope, you're American. I tag you.
So Trump says that Pope Leo XIV should host both leaders. If you remember, he did just meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and Vice President J.D. Vance at the Vatican. That was around his inaugural mass held on Sunday. This path toward a ceasefire came one day after Russia targeted Ukraine with one of its largest drone bombardments of the war, and in the wake of last week's disappointing peace talks in Istanbul between Russia and Ukraine.
So we should note that Pope Francis did offer at one point, the previous Pope, to facilitate talks. And this Pope and last Pope called for peace in Ukraine. But ultimately, in modern history, we haven't really seen the Pope really play a key diplomatic role when it comes to a serious negotiation like this. It does come, Jill, as we continue to see Russia just pummel Ukraine. 400 drones over the weekend, killing a number of civilians. And it came after, remember, more than a week ago, Putin had said, hey, let's have talks in Turkey. And it didn't show up in Turkey. Zelensky was there, along with some low-level Russian diplomats and Russian leaders. And so Zelensky engaged in talks here. Trump had said late last week while he was in the Middle East, nothing's really going to happen here until I talk to Putin. Let me talk to Putin. I can solve this. And he has said, Trump has said, that he doesn't think any peace is going to happen without him personally, that ultimately be up to Trump himself to do a breakthrough here. Here's a bit of Trump talking about that over on Fox News recently.
I always felt there can't be a meeting without me because I don't think a deal is going to get through. There's a lot of hatred on both sides. I have a very good relationship with Putin. I think we'll make a deal. We have to get together.
So, of course, that now came just before this call that Trump had with Putin for a couple hours yesterday. But again, it's not clear specifically what's going to happen here, when the fighting is going to end. Again, the suggestion from Trump, hey, Pope, maybe you take the lead. And the White House has really taken on a huge diplomatic challenge here. They're still trying to solve Israel-Hamas. They're trying to solve Russia and Ukraine. They're trying to do Iranian nuclear talks. They're trying to expand the Abraham Accords in the Middle East. They're negotiating with like 80 countries around the world on trade deals. They had that short negotiation they had to handle between India and Pakistan to prevent a widespread war there. There's just a lot happening on multiple levels here. And in some cases, the same people or same person is handling talks in a number of these places, paging Steve Witkoff. And so ultimately here, it doesn't appear like we're any closer beyond the rhetoric here to a agreement. Remember, Putin has said recently he's laid out a list of demands, including he wants even more of Ukraine. Ukraine, he doesn't even occupy yet. He wants that to be a part of Russia as part of the negotiation. So he's been making a lot of demands here. There's a feeling among the Europeans and Ukrainians that the only way to make a deal is that someone has to play hardball with Putin, and that somebody has to be Donald Trump. And you have seen moments here in recent weeks where Trump has said he's frustrated with Putin. Maybe he's going to do sanctions on Putin, but that's not the tone you got yesterday. But ultimately, Putin was the one who invaded. Putin is the person who occupies 20% of Ukraine. Putin is the one who's engaged in the main offensive here in Ukraine. And so ultimately, playing to Putin's terms and basically letting him do what he wants still wasn't good enough for Putin. So there is the sense in Europe and again in Ukraine saying, hey, Mr. President, as in President Trump, can you start putting pressure on Vladimir Putin? Because this ain't ending anytime soon.
Time for the speed read from the Associated Press. Former President Biden publicly addressed his recent diagnosis of aggressive prostate cancer, sharing a heartfelt message on social media Monday. In his post, accompanied by a photo with his wife Jill and their cat Willow, Biden wrote, quote, "Cancer touches us all. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support." Biden and his family are currently reviewing treatment options. Experts say the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which can allow for effective management of the disease. Biden's announcement that he has been diagnosed with prostate cancer that has metastasized to the bone has been met with an outpouring of support from world leaders, including President Trump and former President Obama. But the advanced nature of his illness has also led to a good degree of skepticism.
Yeah, Jill, we didn't get that many details over the weekend, but what we did get is that he has what's called a Gleason score of 9, which is effectively one of the highest levels, most advanced forms of cancer, typically meaning that the cancer has been growing for a very long time.
So Dr. Zeke Emanuel, who's an oncologist, he served in both the Obama and Biden administrations. He appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe on Monday and suggested that based on his experience, Biden had this cancer and it was spreading throughout his entire presidency, all 4 years.
Oh, he's had this for many years, maybe even a decade, growing there and spreading.
Dr. Emanuel went on to question why medical records from Biden's term do not appear to show that he ever received a PSA test while he was in office. The PSA test is a common blood test that is used to screen for prostate concern.
By the way, if that last name is recognizable to you, Emanuel, that's because Dr. Zeke Emanuel is one of the three Emanuel brothers, Ari Emanuel, the agent in Hollywood, and then Rahm Emanuel, the politician, former Congressman, Obama chief of staff. And so Zeke is the third of the Emanuel brothers.
Okay, overachievers. Like, we get it. What did their parents should write a book, by the way. They obviously did something
raising the Emanuel brothers. And like, one's a doctor, one's a politician, one's a super agent. But Jill, back to Zeke Emanuel here. You know, one of the reasons I found those remarks striking is, one, it happened on Biden's favorite show, Morning Show. And two, the show is typically, the hosts are typically very sympathetic, very friendly to Joe Biden here, and took a very skeptical tack on a Monday morning. And Emanuel, right, who served under Obama, who served on Biden's COVID task force, saying effectively there's either a cover-up here or incompetence on the part of the White House medical team that was treating the most powerful person on the planet, right? And not only was he the most powerful person, he was deciding whether he was going to run for 4 more years, and decided to, at least until, of course, last summer. Apparently, only 5%, about 5% of prostate cancer cases are detected at this late stage, meaning 95% of the time you detect a cancer or prostate cancer earlier than this. And that's like on average, right? Not with like having, I don't know, like the White House medical team, like serving, not having a personal physician. And so there are a lot of questions here being asked. Again, why did he not get this PSA test? Or if he did, why was it not disclosed? Or why was it not like, hey, your PSA levels are high, maybe let's do an MRI here? A lot of questions being asked, not much in the way of transparency so far. Also a question as to the timing here, that this came the weekend before this Jake Tapper book is coming out, which has a lot of revelations, most of them not very positive about the Biden administration and their cover-up of his cognitive decline. It comes out just a couple days after that audio came out late Friday of Biden's interview with Robert Hur, the special counsel, where he was very confused a number of the times. They had to remind him of the year he became president, the year that Biden became president, but just a lot of medical questions about what they knew, when they knew it. Was the public effectively informed? And so you see this even from like the Trump statement, which was very sort of sympathetic on Sunday. But then by Monday, he was questioning the timing. President Trump said that the public was not informed about Biden's medical situation. You also had Vice President J.D. Vance speaking about the diagnosis as he was coming back from Rome this weekend. Here's a bit of what J.D. Vance had to say about Biden.
Whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job.
So this really backs up the other issues that the Biden administration or former Biden administration is facing here, which was that there was a lack of honesty when it came to his cognitive situation while he was president, the convenient timing of this release, a question given just how far along this cancer is as to how long they knew about this and why they chose this weekend to announce it, and the fact that, well, announcing it this weekend means, ideally, for their vantage point, sympathetic coverage at a time where he's being pummeled by the headlines about what the people around him knew, when they knew it, the allegations about why he still ran for president, even though there were like legitimate issues about what was happening. And so just a lot of questions here. At the same time, I think everyone wishes the former president well, hopes for a positive prognosis here. There are ways for him to fight this, but this ultimately is a terminal condition. He will be dealing with this for the rest of his life. And so, Jill, if the Biden folks comms team was hoping for some sympathetic coverage out of this announcement going into this book coming out today, well, they're not getting it from a lot of places.
Moshe, there are so many questions, including If he had taken this test and if he did know that, in fact, he did have prostate cancer, was he being treated for it? And if he was being treated for it, how is he being treated for it? There are some doctors who have said at least one of the medications that possibly could be treating the type of prostate cancer that he has could cause some type of cognitive decline.
Right. So they've posited that, well, if this cancer was growing in him for a while and they knew about this, that the medication or whatever treatment he was getting for this, if in fact they knew about this while he was president, could have led to some of what we witnessed unfold in those final couple of years as president.
From ABC News, the Supreme Court Monday authorized the Trump administration to terminate temporary protected status for about 350,000 Venezuelans residing in the United States, potentially exposing them to deportation. Temporary protected status, or TPS, it was established in 1990, and it allows people from countries that are experiencing armed conflict, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions to live and work legally in the United States. Venezuela was designated for TPS by the Biden administration in 2021 because of the country's ongoing humanitarian crisis, with protections extended through October of 2026. In February, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced the revocation of Venezuela's TPS designation. A federal judge in California blocked the action in March, citing concerns that the decision was based on negative stereotypes and lacked legal justification. The Supreme Court's decision, however, lifts the lower court's injunction, allowing the administration to proceed with ending TPS for Venezuelans while legal challenges continue.
The issue the Trump administration has had with the temporary protected status program is that they believe it offers too many grants of protection and fails to allow them to expire even when the emergencies that led to those grants abated. So they give TPS protection for Haitians or for Venezuelans or for various groups, and then they never follow up with the fact that the country has stabilized in some way, if it has stabilized. So as far as they're concerned, this is a way to kind of rein things in a couple years earlier than expected and fits in with the overall administration goal of limiting both legal and illegal immigration. At the same time, you have the other side, which argues that this is the largest single action stripping any group of non-citizens of immigration status in modern U.S. history, and this is going to have huge humanitarian and economic impact on Venezuelans for generations to come. That things have not stabilized in Venezuela. The economy is in a tailspin. Hyperinflation, hundreds of percentage points in terms of hyperinflation. Currency devaluation. The Maduro government there continues to arrest political prisoners or anyone it accuses of being critical as political prisoners, jailing the opposition. Remember, there was an election there. We believe the opposition actually won. Maduro stayed in power and ultimately, by sort of fighting off the world, was able to remain in power. And that crisis over the course of the past decade has led more than 8 million Venezuelans to flee the country, one of the largest refugee crises in the world. About a quarter of the population has left. And so the feeling was, let's allow these Venezuelans, we already have a Venezuelan population here, to at least be here, establish themselves in the U.S., given the complete instability and the fact that they could face pretty dire circumstances back at home. But as far as the Trump administration is concerned here, it is time to end the program, at least for this group.
From Fox News, the House Budget Committee narrowly advanced what President Trump is calling his big, beautiful bill. It's his expansive tax and spending proposal with a 17-16 vote. And it followed intense negotiations over the weekend, during which 4 conservative Republicans shifted their vote from no to present. So that let the bill proceed out of the initial committee to another committee and then to a full House vote. Although the bill still appears to be in flux, even as they got a few key votes, the several trillion-dollar legislation would make Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent, eliminate taxes on tips and overtime pay. It raises spending on the military and immigration enforcement, and it creates, quote, money accounts for growth and advancement, or MAGA accounts for newborns, with the federal government contributing $1,000. To pay for all of that, the bill cuts spending on Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidies for clean energy. But even those cuts will not cover the entire cost of the bill. The legislation now moves to the House Rules Committee, with Republican leaders aiming for a full House vote before Memorial Day.
So this bill could add anywhere between $2.5 to $5 trillion of the national debt. It could be the piece of legislation that adds most of the debt of any recent bills here. It is one of the reasons why late on Friday, the Moody's rating service downgraded U.S. credit, citing rising debt levels and the fact that Congress and the government is still not taking care of those debt levels. In fact, they're going in the wrong direction here. And that's been the big issue for these conservative Republicans who are like, we're fiscal conservatives. We have to stop spending here, and we'll draw a line in the sand, even if it comes at the expense of President Trump's bill. Then something happened over the weekend, Jill. They were convinced, at least a number of them, to not vote no, but vote present, effectively neutral. Conservatives here have insisted on more Medicaid work requirements. Now, Democrats and even some Republicans are like, that's going to mean a lot of people are kicked off of Medicaid. That's an issue politically as they face midterm elections next year. There are a lot of Democrats on Medicaid. There are a lot of Republicans on Medicaid. They've also talked about killing some of the Biden clean energy tax credits sooner. But Democrats are upset here because they won't exactly say what changed. Republicans are like, we're really happy with these changes, but it's not clear exactly what changed. The bill now goes to the Rules Committee. Now, typically, legislation should be pretty complete by the time it comes out of committee. In this case, it is not. It is in flux here, and negotiations are still happening in some back rooms. Now, it still has to get through the Rules Committee, then it has to get through the full House, very narrow majority for Republicans. Will conservatives be happy with the final product here? And even then, where does it go? How does a bill become a law? Over to the U.S. Senate, where Republicans and Democrats will have their own take on things. And so we'll see how things go in Senate negotiations. But there is this divide amongst Republicans here, the fiscally conservative Republicans, I should say, who say, if we're going to add all this stuff, taking a lot less money with these tax cuts becoming permanent, ending tax on tips, ending taxes on overtime, that's a lot less money coming to the government. Well, we're still spending a lot. So we're not cutting enough here. And so that's one of the issues they have, whereas some of the people in more the MAGA wing, Trump wing, are like, we're less concerned about spending and more concerned about just doing the things we promised we would do. And we've seen this, Jill, now since the Bush administration. Like the last four presidents have increased the debt by insane amounts, basically since 9/11. Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again. And so we're very much, even with the talk of Doge saving about $100 billion or so of the $2 trillion they promised. But here we're talking about a bill that's going to add several trillion to the debt here. And it's interesting because, you have conservatives, hardcore conservatives who are like, it doesn't cut enough. And then Democrats who are mad at it because they're cutting too much. So everyone's angry with it, at least on the two sides, for very different reasons.
Some auto news from Road and Track magazine. Here's a 2025 trend you may not have seen coming. Minivans are having a bit of a sales renaissance. Sales for the Kia Carnival, which now has a new hybrid variant, are up 60% so far year over year in 2025. It had a very big April too, up 87% compared to April of 2024. The Toyota Sienna is up huge in 2025. Also, sales through April show a 54% increase over the same time period in 2024. Sienna sales have grown substantially month over month this year. January started small with about 6,500 sales, but April was huge. More than 10,000 minivans sold, and those are some big numbers considering the Sienna didn't even crack 6,000 sales in any month during the first half of 2024. What's going on, Moshe? Why are people loving the minivan again?
Well, so there are a few reasons here they cite. And by the way, we should also note Honda seeing big sales with its Odyssey as well. Odyssey sales big up. So Toyota Sienna, Honda Odyssey, Kia Carnival, all up. Edmunds, which tracks all of this data, their head of insights, Jessica Caldwell, says that this is tied to both product improvements, as in the minivan is design-wise cooler looking, but also market forces here. We've talked about how with concerns about tariffs, car sales across the board are up as well. And what they say is that people who buy minivans are planners and predisposed to planning well. So if you're watching the tariffs, you probably are if you're a potential minivan buyer because you're a planner. You sort of saw these two trends coming together, which is, again, they're making the design cooler and you tend to be a planner. And so those are a couple of things they see coming together here. Jill, we should still note to people, the minivan ain't taking over the SUV anytime soon, But there are some minivan SUV crossovers that are also seeing increased sales here. We're talking Kia Telluride, Honda Pilot, Toyota Grand Highlander as well that are also seeing strong sales. So SUV is still big, but then you got these crossovers, and then you got the like minivans, the 2025 minivans and beyond that people are liking. So Jill, if you want to impress, the folks out on Long Island as you drive your kids to school, it might be time to trade in whatever you have going right now for that minivan.
With my 90s hip hop blasting.
Go put the Discman on top.
I mean, as I'm cruising down the LA.
That little tape cassette string that goes to the Discman on the dashboard with the Velcro. You know what I'm talking about if you had that going back then.
From the New York Times, the president of CBS News announced that she was resigning Monday, citing fundamental disagreements with the company's direction. Wendy McMahon telling staff in an email that, quote, "It has become clear the company and I do not agree on the path forward." Her departure comes amid escalating tensions between CBS's parent company Paramount and President Trump over a $20 billion lawsuit that accuses 60 Minutes of deceptively editing an interview with former Vice President Kamala Harris during the 2024 campaign. McMahon opposed settling the lawsuit, a stance that conflicted with Paramount's desire to resolve the matter quickly so that the Trump administration would approve Paramount's sale to a Hollywood studio called Skydance. The situation prompted the executive producer of 60 Minutes, Bill Owens, to resign last month. At the time, McMahon signaled her support for Owens, saying that, quote, "standing behind him was an easy decision for her." Moshe, I spent about 4 years at CBS, but I was over at the New York Stock Exchange. I had drama, but no CBS drama. You were in the thick of it, 10 years at CBS. What do you make of all of this?
Jill, so much drama. There was so much drama then. There's so much drama now. If anyone ever asked me, like, hey, Moshe, like, would you go back to like network news or one of these main networks? This is reason like 578,474 why no. I will never go back to a place like that. And it's usually not listeners of this podcast or my news followers who are just like, I love the new media thing. It's usually people like in the business who are like, you should go fix that place, Moshe. Like, things like I
tried.
I was like, I tried my best. They would not have it. And that's one of the issues. CBS is now about to get its 6th president in 6 years, Jill, and honestly been rudderless for probably 8 years, going back to like the Me Too scandal. When I was there, we were firing Charlie Rose and whatnot. Wendy wasn't seen as particularly effective. Neither were her predecessors. And that's one of the issues is even on a good day, as a network president, whether you're CBS or one of these other networks, you're managing audience decline. Your average viewer is in their mid to late 60s. You're not replacing them. They're going away. You basically rate your wins every month or every quarter based on losing the fewest amount of viewers compared to NBC and ABC. You're making less money on streaming than you are on networks, so digital dimes to analog dollars, chaos internally, a bunch of Gen Zers that are going to HR when their stories aren't being approved. Jill, there's so much going on there, a lack of innovation, just so many issues. And so internally at CBS, many are not surprised at this move. Wendy McMahon was expected to be gone months ago due to a number of scandals there. You do see that due to a number of scandals and various failures within the news division there, it's basically a thankless job at this point. And so they're waiting on this new management, this tie-up with Skydance, and we'll see what comes of it. There's still a lot of good people there. You can still do a lot of good work at those places, but just a lot of internal drama. But Jill, if they offer you the network president job, you should totally go take it.
I was about to end with, okay, so Moshe, all of our jobs at Mo News are safe. I take it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the offer they make me, Jill. I kid. After that statement, that either makes sure I will never get that job, or they might call me being like, Moshe, that indictment is perfect.
You.
We need someone like this. No, Jill, rest assured, I won't take that job unless they acquire Mo News and allow it to operate independently, okay?
I don't hate that idea. All right, from CNBC, according to a recent report from Microsoft, 9 to 5 employees are interrupted at least every 2 minutes by meetings, emails, and other distractions. If you feel that deep in your bones, like we do here at Mo News, we've got some suggestions on how to reduce those distractions.
All right, so here are a couple suggestions. Determine what time of day and where you're most productive, and then block your calendar and treat that time like an important meeting that you can't blow off. So effectively create spots during the day where you're not checking your email, where you can't be interrupted, and that's super important. So treat it like the Zoom meeting that you hate. But this Zoom meeting is with yourself, okay? Even turn on Zoom, turn on Microsoft Teams, and you're just sitting in a room by yourself, and you're doing your work, and no one can distract you. So that's one suggestion we have. Next, figure out if there's another place inspiration strikes. Maybe you have your best ideas when you're on a run or walking your dog. This, of course, assumes that you have more of a hybrid work environment, and be sure to make time for that in your workday to let your creativity flow. Encourage your team to do the same. So that really depends on the job, of course, but ultimately know yourself, know your productivity, and find ways to block the world out so you can actually accomplish things in this world we live in of constant interruption. Just FYI, folks, Jill does the late morning run thing, and so she's sometimes in our meetings doing the run, right, while on the run.
The weighted vest walk.
The weighted vest.
It's my weighted vest walk.
It's not a run, it's a walk, but it's with a weighted vest. She's huffing and
For
puffing.
Bone density. You're like, you're walking. Why are you so, what's with the heavy breathing?
I'm so winded.
I'm wearing 12 pounds here. Moshe, it's all great advice. I think the best advice is just put your phone away, close all of your social media tabs, and just really stay present in what you're doing, because it is crazy just how many distractions there are.
Yeah, and I think it's email management is super important. Not every email needs to be answered immediately. And so, find those times where you're like, okay, it's email check time, as opposed to email check time being all the time. All right, now we end here as always with On This Day in History. Beginning in 1873, Jacob Davis is a tailor in Reno, Nevada. He is one of Levi Strauss's regular customers. Davis actually makes pants with rivets at the time. On this day in history, the two of them receive a patent for a piece of clothing that we would start to call one day the blue jeans. Strauss was a wholesaler, and so in 1872, Davis, the tailor, writes a letter to Strauss about his method of making work pants with metal rivets on the stress points. He's like, listen, I don't have money, Levi, but you have money, and you should patent this. Let's work together on this. So they get a patent for what's called the improvement in fastening pocket openings. They would become known as the blue jeans. The patent granted on this day, May 20th, 1873. Jill, one of the lessons to be learned from all of this: listen to your customers. Levi Strauss did, and we're still wearing Levi's today.
The customer is always right.
Customer is always right, though at the time they referred to these new pants as waist overalls.
Moshe, I prefer dungarees.
There you go. Everyone's got their name for it. All right, fast forward here to 1996, a major victory for the LGBT civil rights movement on this day. A major Supreme Court decision related to Colorado that protected the rights of gays and lesbians in the state, leading to further decisions, including the decision in the last decade to allow everyone to get married in this country. On this day in 2015, David Letterman, who really revolutionized late-night television, officially stepped down as the host of Late Show with David Letterman. So 10 years off the air for David Letterman as of On This Day in History. Of course, he now has a series over on Netflix. And shall we end with a bit of music history? First, a happy birthday to Cher, who incredibly turned 79 years old today. So Cher has had a #1 Billboard song in 7 decades, from the 1960s through the 2020s, which is one of her many incredible feats. So Cher turning 79 today. Busta Rhymes also celebrates a birthday today. I think he's somewhere in his 50s, 53 or 54, I want to say, Joe. And one final item, what I teased at the top. On this day, 34 years ago, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, released their song Summertime. Still, after all these years, Jill, it gives you that right vibe for the summer.
Moshe, I was just looking up the lyrics, and this song and pretty much all of Will Smith's early hits, even his later ones, they're so clean and good-natured, right? Even parents don't understand. Do you remember that song? I love that one.
Well, I mean, especially as compared to like some of the more gangster rap and whatever that was going on at the time. The Will Smith clean cut hip hop and rap really distinctive there.
Yeah, you don't need a radio version. It's all a radio version.
No, it's all the clean version. There's no explicit version.
Just like us, Moshe. Just like the Mo News podcast.
We
keep it clean.
We keep it PG. Yeah, PG-13
Most of the
sometimes. Yeah, most of the time.
Thank you guys for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It really does help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, review us in the App Store. And Mosh, great to have you back for more than a pop-in. We appreciate it.
It's good to be back, Jill. Just in time for a big day for me. On this day in history tomorrow, I was born. Early preview of On This Day in History tomorrow.
Thank you for the reminder.
If you haven't gotten me a birthday present yet, Jill, that was your reminder.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.